Hey everyone, it's Michael from Chess Lifestyle, and yeah, today I wanted to cover quite an important video for us adult improvers. I realize that there are probably some juniors watching this video as well, and for any juniors watching, turn off the video straight away and don't listen to the following advice, because this is a video on how to crush these underrated juniors that are trying to take away our hard-earned rating points. And yeah, basically, the discussion about underrated juniors and how to beat them has been around for forever. And probably the advice you hear most of the time is that juniors are bad at endgames, play something solid, get them into an endgame, and win, right? So maybe avoid some theory, play something maybe a bit more old school, and then try and win in the endgame. Now, this is good advice. I still think it makes sense, but I think nowadays juniors are a lot more well-rounded than they used to be. I think nowadays the resources that juniors have access to, they can just be very good at endgames already, and they don't really have such obvious holes in their play. So I still think that advice is good, but I think we can kind of go a bit deeper into how we can potentially beat underrated juniors. And I think there is an aspect which I've noticed, and for me, I've played many underrated juniors in the last year or two. Just somehow it's always my luck that I get paired against them, and maybe everyone does, right? Like there's just so many strong juniors playing chess nowadays. But what I want to recommend is that if you play an opening that is very strategical in nature, and you feel like you've got a very good strategical understanding of it, there is a high chance that your junior opponent may not have, experienced this strategical opening much, given that, probably half the games are going e4, e5, and maybe some Sicilians. It's you can kind of beat them in chess strategy. I think this is true. And the other thing that I found that is just, the case for all juniors, unless they're extremely, extremely strong and very experienced already, is that they definitely like to favor their own plans a lot. Like they'll be really thinking about, their ideas, their plans, and they find it very difficult to consider the opponent's ideas. And I found that that's just the majority of juniors, even if they're very strong, this is probably one of their weakest spots. So prophylaxis, they may know about it, but they just don't really make use of it. And I wanted to show you a couple games today, basically games where I managed to beat these underrated juniors. One was taken from my recent British Rapid Play Championships, which I am going to do a live stream of the analysis of this on Thursday. So yeah, if I manage to upload this in time, definitely check this out on Thursday. That's Thursday the 7th. Because I'm going to be analyzing this with my coach Nicola, and we're going to do it on stream. And I think people can benefit from this a lot. But in any case, if you're watching this way past that date, basically, that was from the British Rapid Play, and my second game is from the British British Championships Major Open of last year. So I wanted to show both of these games, and let's try and understand how I was able to beat them. So it's very nice because this game has the live times. This was DGT board. And I played Bishop G7, and I played my Gurgenitsa Modern, which I have an opening course on my Patreon, which if any of you are interested in learning more about it. But yeah, the point is, when white plays this kind of Austrian attack, we get a very different kind of position because the position gets very locked up, and black is aiming to get this very close setup, which we get here. And I'm completely in book at this point. So, firstly, a lot of players blunder the move g4 here, trying to just immediately undermine this setup, but this actually loses because there's this queen h4 move, and ideas of then taking the pawn are much stronger. Because at first glance it looks like pawn takes, and there's no problem here because the queen protects, but the problem is there's this check, right? So my opponent quite rightly plays the move bishop e3, and I don't know if this is prep or if this is just, natural, strong, intuitive play, but he plays bishop e3, and now g4 really is on the card. So as soon as g4 is on the cards in this kind of setup, then h4 is strong. So already you can see that the position is very nuanced in this closed position, and very soon you're going to see that my opponent kind of runs out of ideas. And one more thing, just before I continue, I forgot to mention that these two players, which I'm about to show you, this guy, he's 2400 online, rapid, but his rapid rating in FIDE is 1700, so definitely underrated. And when I played this player called Jai, his standard, when I played him in the standard game, he was 1700 standard as well, despite his ECF national rating actually being higher than mine, close to 2100. So a very underrated player as well. So you're going to see, these are the classic kind of underrated juniors that you have to try and beat, despite them being pretty good players. Okay, my opponent kept developing, which is fair. And my opponent actually found this fantastic idea. So I really don't know if this was like prepped before the game, because actually the pairings came out for like a good 15 minutes before this round. So maybe he actually managed to find some games and maybe he had a coach to recommend this. But he found this fantastic idea, which is actually a very high level idea, which is basically to play. So, okay, I should also explain my idea. I am not going to castle in this opening because I want to keep my rook on tabs on this h4 pawn. And actually I do this very weird development of bishop f8, king e7, bishop e7, king f8, king g7. And the reason why I can take my time is because this is such a closed position. I'm able to take my time here. And so bishop f8 was played, queen f2, bishop e7. And here my opponent found this really, really nice idea of knight g1. And this is exactly the line that you want to play. You want to play this maneuver and target this h4 pawn. I actually laughed at the board. I actually laughed and my opponent kind of gave me a look, because I was kind of like, no way does he know this idea of like rerouting the knight to f3. This is such a high level motif in this structure, which I would really struggle to find with the white pieces, but he just found it like instantly, right? He got more time than he started with. But okay, I was playing very quick at this moment, and I wanted to just put really high amount of time pressure on his clock. And basically here, I played the move knight f5 without really thinking too much, because basically here, my opponent can play the move e6, and I wonder if e6 is actually a strong move. It's not. Generally, it isn't. Generally, it doesn't work out, and normally I can play knight f8 here if needed. And yeah, we can see knight f8 is a completely fine move in order to cover these weaknesses, and eventually I can consider maybe even taking this knight as well. Maybe even I can do it immediately. It's probably not so bad. But yeah, the point is, like, I kind of went for this motif, and the reason why you take with the e pawn is because you want to play knight f8 and knight e6 to get this very solid structure. And my opponent played rook e1, I guess, with some ideas of playing e6, so I put a stop to that. And I put my knight on e6. And as you can see, around about here, right? Around about here, look at his time, right? He plays this move pretty quickly, and now he's already having to have a think, like, is he going to castle on the queen side? Is he going to castle on the king side? Okay, he chooses king side. Okay, is he going to take? Okay, he decided that pretty quickly. And now, in this position, again, another decent amount of time, 2 minutes 30, and in a rapid play game, this is like a sixth of your time, if I've done the maths correctly. Like, this is a sixth of your time, and to spend it on a move like queen e2 is completely, impractical. But, the junior wants to have a clear plan for themselves, and in such a position where it's so closed, it's very difficult for them to find. And meanwhile, I am just slowly improving my pieces, just cementing the position even more. And okay, I have no idea if this a5, a4 idea was good, but I just kind of wanted to play for something. And eventually, my opponent decided, okay, he has to do something. He has to play c4. So, okay, he attacks the center. He plays this knight d2. I support the center. And, okay, he makes this inaccuracy. c5 was best, although I wouldn't have been so, unhappy to see this. That just gives me something to bite on eventually. And in this position, I just improve my rooks, just link up my rooks, and you can see the last 10 moves or so, I'm really not doing anything. Okay, I've spent some time on the clock because I wanted to make sure that I'm not blundering anything. But as you can see, my opponent is already down to 3 minutes. So as you can see, the opponent has really struggled to find a correct plan. And around about now, I had the idea that here, I was going to play the move c5. And I was going to play it fast, and I was going to play it very, very confidently. And the reason why I was going to play a move like c5 is because now, just as he's getting into time trouble and starting to panic, is the right time to screw and maybe screw is the wrong adjective. Basically, just like turn up the position a notch, make it a whole lot more complicated when my opponent is now in time trouble. So I felt like I played this game perfectly in terms of my time management, and actually I want to do a whole separate video on time management another day. But yeah, basically I didn't give my opponent a chance to make a plan, and suddenly here I quickly blast out c5. Now actually I realized that this might actually be inaccurate, because my whole plan was if they take on c5, I would push d4, and in this position, if I play c5 and I push d4, I've just got a great position. I'm going to recapture on c5 next. But in this position, actually, I kind of messed up, because now they can take. And here, rather than play b4 where I can take en passant and just take back the pawn, here they can actually just play b4. And I was looking at this position during his time, and I thought, okay, maybe I've got some counterplay of b6, and the engine actually says I have full compensation here. But in this position, definitely c5 would have been better without this resource to be able to push b4. But in any case, it didn't matter, because my opponent was now really panicked, really flustered by the fact that I just smashed out this move c5 as well. Like, you want to make it a bit theatrical as well. And here my opponent just blundered with cd5. I took back, and his idea was to try and play g4. Now, recently, I've actually been learning a lot more about knights. And in fact, there's this great book called Under the Surface by Jan Markos I'd highly recommend. And has all kind of different nuggets of gold in middle game mastery. And there's a whole topic about knights and knights in closed positions. And it kind of discussed like how when a knight doesn't have many good squares, it can kind of be a bit of a problem piece. And here, always on this g4 move in the Gurgenitzer modern, you're always taking h takes g. Because then you open the h file, you prevent this pawn, damaging your pawn structure. So I wanted to play this move, but I realized like after this moment here, white gets some activity, right? White's got some threats, and I'd have to play like very precisely, maybe some king f8, but I just thought I don't really want to activate this knight. So in this position, I found a really nice move, and again, I think this move is perfect against a junior, because not only a junior, but someone with only a minute left, because basically I completely cut any hope of some counterplay, and they're just left with this very poor knight. Like, they don't have time to play knight d2 because I'm just going to take on d4. And here my opponent actually blundered, because I just took on d4. He then moved the bishop back with only increment left, right? It was 15 minutes plus 10 seconds to move. Now dropping f4. And now the very nice thing is in this position, I can now take another pawn, and I have a winning position. And funnily enough, in this position, I've actually got many wins here. I was just blitzing out the moves because I felt like they're all natural, they can't be bad. But in this position, my opponent played rook d4, and I was like, oh my god, like, have I messed this up? Like, I've got knight d5, but I had to see very precisely. And as you can see, I spent some time around here, I think, around this move. Yeah, I spent 3 minutes on this move, because once you've got a winning position, this is kind of like Chess for Tigers 101. But once you've got a winning position, you don't try and play on the clock. You just calculate and make sure whatever line you calculate is winning. And here I managed to calculate that I have a very important move at the end, which is this queen e5. Because otherwise, maybe this rook would pin my knight and win back the piece, and then it's not clear. But after I pin this rook, then it's completely clear. And again, my opponent only had 10-second increment to play. I just added pressure. Immediately, my opponent blundered, and this was just game over. I mean, in this position, this is actually a tricky move, right? I can't take here, because then they will take here and win 2 rooks, and maybe, just maybe, they have some hope. But of course, I just take the rook, and there's absolutely no play. And my opponent, I mean, in this position, it's funny. I even saw checkmate in 5, and I was like, nah. Why risk a checkmate in 5 that I could potentially have miscalculated when I can just trade for queens and win completely easily? So I just completely converted the position, took my time, made sure there was no risk of any stalemates, and checkmate. So this was how I beat a 2400 rapid player online who was a 1700 FIDE rapid. So underrated junior. I don't know, I think he was born, when was he born? 2013, right? So I don't know how old that is. uh, 11 years old, right? So really strong, promising junior. And he found some really nice ideas. And in fairness to him, like he found this whole knight g1 knight f3, which is like this really high level concept. But the problem for him was that he just didn't have a clear plan. And the problem for him was that the reason why there wasn't a clear plan is not because he sucks at chess, but because I didn't allow for there to be a clear plan, right? I choose a super closed structure, super blocked up position, and he kind of just self-destructed. And also he burnt a lot of time. And for me, I was able to squeeze and put a lot of pressure on the clock because I knew the position very well. And this felt like a really decent method to beat a junior. And I found that, yeah, when I kind of achieved this, I'm beating juniors all the time. Like juniors just can't handle this kind of chess. So I think if you do have this option in your repertoire or in your style as a player, to basically pull these tricks out of the bag, this is kind of like the surest way to beat an underrated junior, because ultimately, they're 11 years old. No matter how gifted they are at tactics, no matter how many hours they've spent with a coach, how many hours of online chess they've played, they are ultimately inexperienced, not only as a chess player, but as a person. And for a person to deal with such a kind of bullyish approach to chess, where I'm being super solid, preventing my opponent from having any fun, any plans, and then basically just harassing them on the chess clock, right? Playing a move like c5, smashing it out on the board, making it a whole performance, right? This kind of stuff, this is hard for a human to take, let alone a child, right? So for an underrated junior, this is the kind of the game we've got to play. And I really did a good job against Jai as well. I won't go into the opening. I got the same Gurgenitsa modern. This time I didn't have a chance to develop my bishop. Although actually after reviewing the game, I found that I actually in this position, I do have the option to play bishop g4 with a very interesting development plan, which I haven't seen before. But to play the move knight f5 and then play the move h4 here. So that on h3, we've actually got the move bishop h5. And somehow the bishop actually stays active on this square and can trade itself with the knight at any point the knight develops. And yeah, this is just a great square for the bishop. So I've never seen this idea of being able to develop the bishop, because at first glance it looks somewhat problematic, right? If I play e6, maybe there's a point where he will find a way to trap my bishop, right, on this f5 square. But yeah, with this idea of playing for h4, yeah, this is really cool. But anyway, that's a different topic for another day. Basically, I just got this same kind of solid position, right? I didn't allow him much. I developed my bishop to a6 instead, and just kept really solid. And it was really interesting because at some point around here, my opponent offered me a draw. So in this position, yeah, I probably should have gone to g7 in hindsight, but I went to d7. And in this position, my opponent played knight e1 and offered me a draw. Okay, he was 300 points lower rated than me at the time, FIDE-wise, so I guess that's why. And he offered me a draw. Now, if you remember from the start of this video, what did I say about juniors? They are always focused on their own plan and very little regard to your plan, right? So in this position, actually have a think here. Firstly, of course, we turn down the draw, but how do we turn down the draw? And what should we play? So I hope you paused the video and had a think. Firstly, when he offered me the draw, I thought about it, realized that I've actually got a really nice move in this position. And then I said something along the lines of, maybe later. And made my move and pressed the clock. And it's very, very good to save a move like maybe later, because it kind of shows a sign of weakness from me, even though it's actually just all a trick. I'm not actually thinking about the draw later, right? I'm thinking about winning this game. But maybe the opponent or maybe the junior is suddenly thinking, oh, okay, maybe this guy is just wanting to play some more moves because he's a high rated player, but yeah, he's going to accept this draw soon because it's such a close position. There's nothing going on. And that's the other thing, right? I know this position very well. He probably has seen this only a few times, right? So in this position, why did he play knight e1, right? Where every time your opponent makes a move, you've got to ask yourself this question. And in this position, it was very clear to me the only reason why he could be thinking of a move like knight e1 is because he wants to play knight d3 and knight c5. And this might be a decent idea because then he gets like a pawn on c5, a passed pawn. Maybe he can put a knight on d4. Maybe he can support it with a rook. So this definitely felt like his idea, right? So in this position, I declined his draw by saying maybe later, played the move queen a8, and of course, he played knight d3 instantly. And as soon as he played knight d3, I smashed the move knight c4 out onto the board, like with huge confidence, and he completely sat bolt upright in his seat. Obviously had completely missed this idea from me. And this queen a8 was very tricky because queen a8, I mean, you may have seen the same idea with queen b7, which both of moves are completely winning if knight d3. But queen b7, maybe my opponent would spot this trick, right? Because basically, you know, what other reason could there be of queen b7 except for this trick? However, queen a8, maybe there's some idea of trying to play on the h file, right? Maybe this is the idea behind queen a8. So I felt like it's a bit more flexible and a bit more tricky. And as I said, kids are very, very bad at actually slowing down and respecting the opponent enough to consider their moves, right? My opponent had zero respect for me and just played knight d3, and then I smashed out knight c4, and then the kid realized that actually this position is completely lost. There's not a single move here. Taking, of course, allows this discovery and hit on the knight, and this is completely winning now that this pawn is passed and protected. And yeah, he tried queen e1, but now it was just a matter of playing precisely. And okay, once you've got a winning position against an underrated junior, then you just win the position, right? Like you just convert the position, and yeah, it's not so much a big deal that they're an underrated junior anymore. You've got a winning position. So here, okay, maybe I didn't play it in the most clean way, but I managed to get keep the advantage, and okay, I had to be a bit careful here, but in the end I managed to find a way to win. I think I missed like some checkmate sequences, and I know like my friend Caius was watching the game, and he was like rolling his eyes like at, okay, I didn't see that he was rolling his eyes obviously because that would be pretty bad, but okay, he said to me afterwards like, yo, I missed so many wins like in this conversion. Okay, this is not my strong suit, but okay, I found this way to have a winning endgame, and I won. So this is two really nice clean games, I think, overall against underrated juniors. And I think this at least shares my kind of experience with beating these kind of players. And really, I think it's essential knowledge for like an adult improver to improve, because ultimately, to improve your rating in chess, you basically have to be consistent. And that means even beating underrated juniors who have no business having that low rating, who can literally shark like a whole month's of progress, right? Like, I mean, I've literally been there, right? Like I've had tournaments where, I mean, I think I've shown this on a previous video, but like I remember one tournament, I don't know if I can, oh no, this is like, holy crap, look how many games this guy is playing. Jesus Christ. This guy is playing more like, this guy is playing like a professional. Anyway, I won't get my profile up, but basically like I had one tournament where I was like, you know, scored 50% against players 200 points higher rated than me and lost to one 1700 who was actually a 2100 ECF player, like, and I lost rating as a result. Like, these juniors can absolutely shark your progress and really demoralize you. So it's absolutely essential you get in the right headspace when facing them. And I think this is kind of like the best recommendation I can offer as to how to beat these guys. So yeah, use the fact that they're inexperienced as a human being, and also use the fact that they're just generally more cocky and determined to make their plans work and less respectful of your plans. And with that extra knowledge, you might have a chance to, yeah, give them a bit of a heart attack and beat them. So, yeah, on that note, that's all from me. I will definitely be doing another video on time management at some point, because I think there are some nice unique tips that I've thought about which you guys might find useful. And again, if you're watching this when it has been uploaded, definitely tune in for Thursday afternoon stream, because I'm going to be analyzing my games with an international master, and I think it'll be really instructive to see how I view positions versus a 2400 views positions and see the difference in strength. So on that note, guys, thank you all for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.